"Stop staring at me and pour the wine," the noblewoman hissed under her breath. No one in the royal hall noticed a trembling servant girl lowering her eyes. No one except the Alpha King. By sunrise, the bride he had chosen would mean nothing, because one glance had rewritten destiny. Deception never arrives looking dangerous. Sometimes it comes dressed in silk, hidden behind crowns and smiles. And on the night fate found Alara Vale, she was carrying nothing more than a tray of wine. Born as the illegitimate daughter of a disgraced nobleman, Alara had spent 19 years surviving a life that never wanted her. After her father's death, her cruel stepmother sold her into palace service, where she became invisible, scrubbing floors, serving nobles, and learning that silence hurt less than hope. She was quiet, exhausted, forgotten, but despite everything, Alara held on to one small dream: freedom, not power, not love, just freedom. Far beyond her world ruled Alpha King Rowan Draven, the feared Wolf King of the North, a warrior whispered to be cold as winter and ruthless as war itself. Men respected him, enemies feared him, and no one dared stand before him without trembling. When Rowan announced he would choose a bride during a royal ceremony, noble families flooded the palace. Among them stood Lady Vivian Ashbourne, beautiful, wealthy, and cruel beneath her perfect smile. Meanwhile, Alara remained what she had always been, a servant no one noticed. As music filled the grand hall and nobles fought for a crown, Alara quietly moved between guests with silver trays and lowered eyes, invisible, safe, forgotten, until she stepped near the throne. Alpha King Rowan Draven looked up and froze, because for reasons he could not explain, the moment he saw the girl serving his wine, everything changed. The great hall of Blackthorn Palace glowed beneath endless candlelight. Noble families filled the room, dressed in silk and jewels, all gathered for one reason. Tonight, Alpha King Rowan Draven would choose his bride. Excitement spread like wildfire. Noble daughters stood with carefully practiced smiles, hoping to become queen. But among the whispers, one name rose above the rest: Lady Vivian Ashbourne. Beautiful, wealthy, powerful. Everyone expected her victory. Even she did. Seated upon his black throne, Rowan Draven looked completely indifferent, massive and cold. His storm gray eyes scanned the room without emotion. This was never about love. Only duty. Only politics. Beside him, Beta Cashin leaned closer. "The council expects Lady Vivian, my king." Rowan said nothing. Then slowly he stood. Silence swallowed the hall. Lady Vivian Ashbourne. Applause exploded instantly. Cheers echoed. Political alliances secured. Vivian lowered into a graceful curtsy, hiding the victorious smile on her lips. Meanwhile, far from crowns and celebration, Alara Vale quietly moved through the room carrying silver trays of wine. Head lowered, eyes down, invisible, just the way life had taught her to survive. Step after step, she approached the throne. Then suddenly, Rowan froze. A scent reached him. Not perfume, not flowers. Something impossible. Soft rain, wild forests, something that felt dangerously familiar. Inside his mind, his wolf surged forward. One word roared through him. Mate. Rowan's body went rigid. No, impossible. Slowly his eyes lifted toward the servant girl. Dark chestnut hair, soft gray eyes, tired features. A servant? Impossible. Yet his wolf wouldn't back down. Claim her. Beside him, Beta Cashin frowned. "My king." No answer. Rowan wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at Alara. Then it happened. As she handed him the wine, her fingers accidentally brushed his hand. Electricity exploded through him. Crack! The crystal goblet nearly shattered in Rowan's grip. And for the first time that night, the Alpha King forgot his chosen bride existed. Something had changed. The celebration continued. Nobles laughed, and music echoed to the great hall. But Alpha King Rowan Draven no longer cared. Ever since the servant girl handed him that wine, his attention kept drifting back to her. Alara, again and again. Beside him, Beta Cashin noticed immediately, because Rowan Draven never got distracted. Never. "My king?" Cashin asked quietly. No response. Inside Rowan, his wolf had become restless. Claim her. Across the hall, Illyra suddenly felt uneasy. She didn't understand why, but every time she looked up, she found the Alpha King staring directly at her. Fear twisted inside her chest. Had she done something wrong? Did she break palace rules? Because attention had never brought Illyra anything except pain. And she wasn't the only one watching. Lady Vivian noticed too. At first, confusion crossed her face, then irritation, then jealousy. Because after choosing her as his bride, Rowan barely looked at her again. Instead, he kept watching a servant. Hours later, as the celebration ended, servants began leaving the hall. Illyra quietly sighed in relief and turned toward the exit. Then Rowan's voice echoed across the room. "The wine girl stays." Silence. The entire hall froze. Servants stared. Musicians stopped. Illyra's face turned pale. "No. Please no." She slowly stepped forward, her heart pounding wildly. Punishment. It had to be punishment. Rowan looked down at her. "What is your name?" "Illyra, your majesty." "Who are your parents?" "My father is dead." Silence. Then Rowan leaned slightly forward and asked, "Why do you smell like jasmine after rain?" Illyra froze. Panic flooded her mind. What kind of question was that? But hidden in the shadows near the doorway, Lady Vivian watched everything unfold. And slowly, she smiled. Not happily, dangerously. Lady Vivian Ashbourne had spent her entire life getting everything she wanted. Power, attention, control, and most importantly, certainty. So when Alpha King Rowan Draven chose her before the entire kingdom, she should have felt victorious. She should have been celebrating. Instead, she was furious, because for the rest of the evening, Rowan barely looked at her once. His eyes kept searching for someone else. A servant, Illyra. At first, Vivian convinced herself it meant nothing. But jealousy is a dangerous thing. Once it enters the mind, it begins asking questions. And questions quickly become obsessions. Days later, while the palace slept beneath silver moonlight, Vivian stood deep inside the royal archives. Dust-covered shelves towered around her, while candles flickered against ancient stone walls. She had not come searching for stories. She came searching for answers. Because no servant could pull the attention of Alpha King Rowan Draven away from his future queen. No ordinary servant. Hours passed. Scroll after scroll. Family records. Blood registries. Forgotten noble lineages. Until suddenly, Vivian froze. Her eyes landed on a name. Illyra Vale. Silence. Absolute silence. Slowly, she unrolled the ancient parchment further, and what she discovered sent cold fear crawling through her chest. Illyra was never meant to become a servant. Years ago, after Lord Herrick Vale's disgrace, records of his illegitimate daughter had quietly disappeared. Not erased. Hidden. Intentionally. But that wasn't the worst part, because folded between the records rested something much older. A prophecy, centuries old. Its faded words read, "The Alpha King's true mate shall rise not from crowns or golden blood, but from forgotten blood." Vivian stared. Then read it again. Forgotten blood. Disgraced blood. Hidden blood. Illyra. Suddenly everything made sense. The staring. The strange questions. The silence. The obsession. Then an even more terrifying realization struck her. Rowan already knew. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not completely. But he knew. He knew exactly what Illyra was. Mate. The word echoed inside Vivian's mind like a nightmare. And for the first time in years, she felt fear. Real fear. Because if Illyra became queen, everything disappeared. The crown. The power. The kingdom. Her future. Everything. Slowly Vivian folded the parchment, then smiled. Not kindly. Not sadly. Coldly. Because desperate people do dangerous things. And Vivian Ashbourne had no intention of losing. Not to servant. Not to Illyra. Across the palace. Hidden behind locked kitchen doors, soft candlelight flickered over silver trays and porcelain cups. A servant moved silently through the darkness. Small footsteps. Careful hands. And without hesitation, a tiny vial emptied into steaming tea. Drop, 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 then silence. Because somewhere inside Blackthorn Palace, someone had just decided Alara Vale needed to die. Royal celebrations often looked beautiful from a distance. Golden chandeliers, music drifting through endless halls, nobles laughing beneath candlelight. But beauty had a dangerous habit of hiding monsters. And on the night Blackthorn Palace celebrated its future queen, danger arrived wearing a smile. Days after discovering the truth about Alara, Lady Vivian Ashbourne changed completely. No anger, no jealousy, no cold stares. Instead, she became kind, suspiciously kind. She greeted Alara warmly in hallways, smiled when passing servants, even spoke softly whenever their paths crossed. And Alara noticed. Everyone noticed. But after a lifetime of cruelty, kindness felt unfamiliar, confusing, dangerous, because the loneliest people often wanted to believe goodness was real, especially when it finally arrived. That evening, music once again filled the great hall. Nobles gathered beneath silver banners, while laughter echoed against towering stone walls. Another royal celebration had begun. Yet, unlike before, Alara no longer felt invisible. And somehow, that terrified her more. Across the room, Rowan watched constantly, always watching, always searching. His storm-gray eyes followed her movements, even while council members attempted conversation. He did not understand what was happening to him, only that every instinct inside him screamed the same thing. Protect her. Near midnight, Alara stepped onto a quiet balcony to escape the noise. Cold night air brushed softly across her face. Finally, silence. For the first time all evening, her shoulders relaxed. Then footsteps approached. Alara turned. Vivian stood there, smiling, gentle, almost regretful. Alara, she said softly, lowering her eyes. I owe you an apology. Alara blinked. An apology? Vivian sighed. I misjudged you. Silence. I was unkind. More silence. For a moment Alara simply stared, because no one apologized to servants. No one, ever. Vivian slowly extended a silver tray, carrying delicate porcelain cups. Steam curled gently into the night air. Tea. I thought perhaps we could start over. Alara hesitated, just for a moment. Then slowly, she smiled. Small, careful, hopeful, because for the first time in years, something inside her relaxed. Maybe she had judged Vivian unfairly. Maybe people could change. Maybe, inside the great hall, Rowan suddenly froze. Completely, his body went rigid. Storm-gray eyes widened. No, no, no. Inside him his wolf exploded violently. Poison. The word slammed through his mind. Poison. Instantly Rowan stood. His chair crashed backward. Nobles jumped. Cashin turned sharply. My king. Too late. Rowan was already moving. Everything slowed. Music. Voices. Time itself. He smelled it. Beneath jasmine. Beneath tea leaves. Beneath cold night air. Death. Rowan crashed through ballroom doors with terrifying force. Splinters flew. People screamed. Balcony doors shattered open. Alara turned, and time broke. Rowan struck the tray. Glass exploded. Porcelain shattered across stone. Tables overturned. Nobles screamed. Panic erupted instantly. Chaos swallowed everything. Alara stumbled backward in complete shock. What? Then Rowan saw Vivian, standing frozen, pale, terrified, exposed. And suddenly, everything became clear. Silence. Absolute silence. Vivian had done this. Vivian had tried to kill her. Rage exploded inside Rowan. Not anger, not fury. Something far worse. His wolf erupted completely. Eyes burned gold. Power rolled to the hall like thunder. People dropped to their knees. Servants trembled. Even walls seemed to shake. Because the Alpha King had stopped being king. Now he was predator. Then a scream got Cashin's voice. My king. Rowan turned instantly. Too late. Far too late. Because amidst panic and chaos, Alara was gone. Gone. No footsteps. No warning. Nothing. Only an open servant passage swaying quietly in darkness. Silence. Then came realization. Kidnapped. For one horrifying second, Rowan simply stared, unmoving, unbreathing. Then Blackthorn Palace felt something it had never felt before. True fear, because Rowan Draven slowly lifted his head. Golden eyes burned like wildfire, and his voice rolled to the entire palace like distant thunder. If she dies... Silence. Absolute silence. Then, kingdoms burn. Some nights change kingdoms. Others change people. And somewhere beyond the walls of Blackthorn Palace, beneath a moon hidden behind storm clouds, Alpha King Rowan Draven was about to lose the last pieces of restraint holding him together. Because Ilera was gone, the palace had descended into absolute chaos. Guards stormed through corridors. Servants trembled in corners. Orders echoed through stone halls. But Rowan heard none of it, because fear had become something far more dangerous. Rage. Pure, terrifying rage. Standing in the center of the shattered ballroom, Rowan slowly lowered his head. Golden light still burned inside his eyes while his wolf clawed violently beneath the surface. Find her. Nothing else mattered. Not politics. Not alliances. Not kingdoms. Only her. Beside him, Beta Cashin dropped to one knee. We found tracks. Silence. Rowan looked up. The eastern forest, Cashin continued. Old fortress ruins. For 1 second, absolute silence. Then Rowan disappeared. Outside, thunder rolled across black skies while massive wolves tore through moonlit forests at impossible speed. Branches snapped beneath monstrous paws. Snow and dirt exploded behind them. Rowan led the hunt himself. Not as king, as something far older, far more dangerous. As mate, because every second without Ilera felt wrong. Every heartbeat felt unbearable. And somewhere deep inside, a horrifying thought kept returning. What if they were too late? Hours later, the abandoned fortress finally emerged through heavy fog. Ancient stone, broken towers, dead silence. The place looked like a grave forgotten by time itself. And inside, Ilera sat bound beside cold stone walls. Terrified, confused, alone. Tears burned behind her gray eyes as questions circled endlessly inside her mind. Why? Why would any of this happen? Why would Rowan come? And then the answer hurt more than anything. Duty? Of course. Kings protected people. Kings protected kingdoms. He wasn't coming for her. Not really. Because girls like Ilera were never chosen. Never. Footsteps suddenly echoed through the chamber. Slow, measured, Vivian stepped forward. Gone was the elegant smile. Gone was the perfect future queen. Only hatred remained. You took everything, Vivian hissed. Ilera stared. I took nothing. Liar. Vivian's voice cracked violently. That crown was mine. Silence. Then realization slowly crossed Ilera's face. This was never about jealousy. It was about fear. Because Vivian already knew. She knew what Ilera was. Mate. Suddenly, boom. The fortress doors exploded inward. Stone shattered. Dust filled the air. And through darkness stepped Rowan Draven. Not king. Not ruler. Predator. Golden eyes burned like wildfire. Power rolled through the fortress walls. Even the air itself felt heavier. Vivian staggered backward. For the first time, she looked afraid. Truly afraid. Behind Rowan, warriors flooded the fortress. Within seconds, guards seized everyone involved. Everyone except Vivian. Because Rowan never looked away from Ilera. Not once. Slowly, he crossed the room. Then stopped. Because Ilera wasn't crying. Wasn't screaming. Instead, she looked at him with heartbreaking sadness. Your Majesty, she whispered softly. The title hit him harder than any blade. Because suddenly Rowan understood. She still didn't know. She thought this was duty. Responsibility. Pity. Silence stretched between them. Then slowly, Alpha King Rowan Draven lowered himself onto one knee. The room froze. Cashin froze. Warriors froze. Even Vivian stared in disbelief. Kings did not kneel. Not for anyone. But Rowan wasn't kneeling as ruler. He was kneeling as mate. Slowly he reached for Ilera's trembling hands. I chose a bride that night because duty demanded it. Silence. Storm gray eyes softened. Then, quietly, But then I saw the girl serving wine. Pause, and my soul chose for me. Silence. Absolute silence. Tears instantly filled Alara's eyes, because for 19 years she had been ignored, forgotten, hidden, invisible, and now the most feared man in the kingdom looked at her as though she were the only thing that existed. Nearby, Vivian collapsed, defeated, finished. Days later, judgment came swiftly. Lady Vivian Ashbourne was stripped of every title. Her family lost their lands, their wealth, and their influence. Before the entire kingdom, she was publicly exiled beyond northern borders. Everything she had tried to steal, she lost herself. And months later, beneath silver banners and endless sunlight, Blackthorn Palace welcomed its new queen. Nobles lined the grand staircase. Warriors bowed. Entire kingdoms watched. Then the palace doors opened, and Alara entered, not carrying silver trays, not lowering her head, not invisible. Beside her stood Alpha King Rowan Draven. Slowly, the entire kingdom knelt, because a forgotten servant girl never found freedom. She found a kingdom